The moment Victor Hale walked through those flickering fluorescent doors at 2:47 a.m., he knew something was wrong. Not with him. He'd survived 3 decades in this city's underbelly by trusting his instincts. It was the girl behind the counter, 22, maybe 23. Hands shaking as she counted his change, eyes that wouldn't meet his. A bruise, poorly covered with makeup, blooming across her left cheekbone. He'd seen that look before. The kind of fear that doesn't come from a stranger in expensive shoes. It comes from knowing that when the lights go out, the real monsters show up. Stick around. Drop a comment with your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. The rain hammered down on the cracked pavement outside the quick stop, like it had a personal grudge against the neighborhood. Victor Hale sat in his black Mercedes S-Class, engine idling, watching water streak down the windshield in chaotic patterns. He should have been home an hour ago. Should have been in his penthouse overlooking the harbor, drinking scotch older than most of the people in this part of town. But he'd taken a wrong turn leaving a meeting, or maybe it wasn't wrong at all. Maybe some part of him needed to see what the city looked like down here, where the shine wore off and the rush showed through. The convenience store sat on a corner that Google Maps probably marked as economically depressed, but locals knew as "don't stop here after dark." Bars covered the windows. The parking lot had more potholes than asphalt. A broken neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting epileptic shadows across the building's grimy facade. The kind of place that sold cigarettes one at a time and didn't ask questions about where your money came from. Victor checked his watch. 2:47 in the morning. He needed cigarettes. Not because he smoked, but because his associate Marcus did, and Marcus had a habit of getting twitchy during negotiations without his nicotine fix. Tomorrow's meeting would be delicate. The Italians were pushing into territory that didn't belong to them, and someone needed to remind them about boundaries. Politely, with just enough menace underneath the courtesy to make it stick. He killed the engine and stepped out into the rain. It soaked through his Tom Ford suit jacket immediately, but he didn't hurry. Men like Victor Hale didn't hurry. They moved with purpose, deliberate and unhurried, because the world waited for them, not the other way around. The electronic chime announced his entrance with a cheerful ding that felt obscene in the oppressive silence. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed with that particular frequency that seemed designed to induce headaches. The aisles were cramped, shelves stocked with off-brand cereal and dented cans of soup. A security camera hung from the ceiling, its red light blinking uselessly. Victor could tell from 20 feet away that it wasn't actually recording. Behind the counter stood a young woman. Victor's first impression was tired. Bone-deep, soul-crushing tired. She wore the store's uniform polo, blue, badly faded, one size too large. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started neat about 12 hours ago, but now hung limp and disheveled. 22, maybe 23 years old, the kind of pretty that survived despite circumstances, not because of them. She looked up as he entered, and something flickered across her face. Not fear, not yet. Just a practiced wariness, the instant calculation of threat level that women working alone at 3 a.m. learn to make in milliseconds. "Welcome to Quick Stop," she said. Her voice carried the flat, mechanical quality of words repeated 10,000 times until they stopped meaning anything. Victor nodded, moving toward the cigarette display behind the counter. His shoes, Italian leather, cost more than she probably made in a month, clicked against the grimy linoleum. He noticed her posture shift slightly, shoulders tensing, hands gripping the edge of the counter. "Marlboro Reds," he said. 2 packs. "ID, please." He almost smiled. He was 47 years old, with gray threading through his temples and lines around his eyes that came from 3 decades of making hard decisions. But rules were rules, even in a place like this. Victor pulled out his wallet, Bottega Veneta, chocolate brown leather, and extracted his driver's license. As he handed it over, their fingers didn't touch, but he noticed hers were trembling, just slightly. The kind of tremor someone tries to hide and almost succeeds. She glanced at the license without really looking at it, then turned to grab the cigarettes from the locked case behind her. That's when Victor saw it. A bruise, purple-black and angry, spreading across her left cheekbone. She'd tried to cover it with makeup, but the harsh fluorescent lights revealed everything. And there, on her wrist as she reached up, another mark. Finger-shaped. Recent. The girl, Lena, her name tag read, pulled down the cigarettes and rang them up with quick, efficient movements. Her hands shook harder now. She'd noticed him noticing. 2318, she said, eyes fixed on the register screen. Victor handed her $30. Keep the change. That made her look up, just for a second. Confusion crossed her face, quickly suppressed. People didn't tip at convenience stores, especially not $7 on a $23 purchase. You don't have to. It's fine. She hesitated, then opened the register and made the transaction. As she handed him the cigarettes, Victor caught her full expression for the first time. And there it was. The thing he'd spent 30 years learning to read in people's faces. Fear. Not fear of him. He'd seen plenty of that over the years. The wide-eyed terror of men who suddenly realized they'd made a very bad mistake. The calculated anxiety of business partners wondering if today was the day their usefulness expired. This was different. This was the fear of someone waiting for something worse to arrive. Thank you, Lena said quietly. Have a good night. Victor took the cigarettes but didn't move toward the door. Instead, he let his gaze drift around the store with the casual attention of someone killing time. But he wasn't looking at products. He was reading the room, camera in the corner, dead. He'd been right about that. Back door behind the counter, exit sign, but no alarm system visible. The angle of Lena's body, positioned so she could see both the entrance and that back door simultaneously. The way her right hand stayed near the edge of the counter, close to where most stores kept a panic button or a weapon. The way she'd initially relaxed when she saw him, then tensed again, not because of him, but because of what his presence meant. A customer at this hour meant the store was occupied, meant she wasn't alone. But it also meant she couldn't relax, couldn't let her guard down. You work here every night? Victor asked. His voice was casual, but he watched her reaction carefully. Lena's shoulders went rigid. Most nights, graveyard shift. Alone? Now the fear sharpened. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to him. Sometimes. Look, is there something else you need? Because... Just making conversation. Victor held up one hand, palm out, non-threatening. Bad neighborhood to be working solo, that's all I meant. She didn't relax. I manage. The electronic chime sounded again. Both of them turned toward the entrance. A man walked in, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He was maybe 40, built like someone who lifted weights to intimidate rather than for fitness. Thick neck, barrel chest, arms that strained against his jacket. His face had the particular hardness that came from years of casual violence. Broken nose never properly set, scar tissue around his knuckles, eyes that evaluated threat and vulnerability in the same glance. When he saw Victor, he paused, just for a second. The recognition wasn't personal. The man didn't know Victor Hale from Adam, but he recognized the type. Expensive suit, confident posture, the particular stillness of someone who didn't flinch easily. Then his gaze shifted to Lena, and Victor saw the girl transform. She went pale. Her breathing quickened, and most tellingly, she stepped back half a pace, putting more distance between herself and the counter, as if proximity to this man carried its own danger. Mr. Briggs, she said. Her voice had gone completely flat. I wasn't expecting you tonight. Briggs smiled. It was the smile of a man who enjoyed being unexpected. Just checking in, sweetheart, making sure everything's running smooth. His eyes flicked to Victor, then back to Lena. Customer giving you trouble? No, sir. He was just leaving. The message was clear. Please leave. Please don't make this worse. Victor should have listened. Should have taken his cigarettes and walked out into the rain and forgotten all about a girl in a convenience store who wasn't his problem. He'd built an empire by knowing when to get involved and when to stay out of other people's business. But there was something about the way she'd said those 3 words. He was leaving, with such desperate hope that he'd actually go. Something about the way Briggs positioned himself in the doorway, blocking the exit, while pretending to be casual. Something about the whole scene that felt like a trap that had already been sprung, just waiting for the right moment to slam shut. Victor made a decision, probably a stupid one. Actually, he said, turning to Lena, I forgot. I need a lighter too. Briggs's eyes narrowed. Lena looked like she might throw up. We have them right here by the register, she said quietly, gesturing to a display of cheap plastic lighters. Her hand shook so badly she knocked several onto the floor. Let me help, Victor said, moving around the counter before either of them could object. The space behind the counter was small, cramped. He bent down next to Lena, picking up the fallen lighters, and that's when he saw it. A cell phone tucked partially under the counter's base shelf. Except it wasn't a store phone. It was newer, more expensive than anything else in this place. And it was recording. The red light was barely visible, but it was there, pointed toward the front of the store, toward where Briggs now stood. Victor straightened up, handed Lena the lighters, met her eyes for just a second, and in that second he understood. She was gathering evidence, against Briggs, against whoever else came through here. She was trapped, terrified, but she was fighting back the only way she knew how. $2.50 for the lighter, Lena said. She'd regained some composure, but her voice still shook. Victor put a 5 on the counter. This time she didn't argue about the change. Briggs had moved closer, ostensibly browsing a shelf of candy bars, but Victor could feel the man's attention like a physical weight, evaluating, calculating, trying to decide if Victor was a problem that needed handling. "You live around here?" Briggs asked. Casual, conversational, and completely false. "Just passing through," Victor replied. He pocketed the lighter and cigarettes. "Long night, wrong turn off the highway. Highway's 3 miles that way." Briggs pointed west with one thick finger. "Easy to miss in the dark, though. Guess I need a better GPS." The tension stretched thin between them, like a wire pulled taut. Lena had gone completely still, barely breathing. Victor could see her trying to become invisible, to not draw attention, to survive the next 60 seconds without anything exploding. Finally, Briggs smiled. "Well, you have a safe drive, friend. Roads are dangerous this time of night." The threat was about as subtle as a brick through a window. Victor nodded to Lena. "Thanks for the help." Then to Briggs, "You too. Stay dry." He walked to the door, every instinct screaming at him to look back, to check on the girl, to do something. But he didn't. He pushed through into the rain, walked to his Mercedes, got in, and started the engine. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he could see Briggs moving behind the counter, close to Lena, talking. She had her head down, nodding. The body language of someone who'd learned that disagreement had consequences. Victor put the car in drive. He made it 3 blocks before he pulled over. For 5 full minutes, he sat there with the rain hammering on the roof, staring at nothing. He'd seen this before. The bruises, the fear, the careful choreography of survival around someone who enjoyed causing pain. He'd seen it in his sister Elena 23 years ago. Different city, different circumstances, same fundamental truth. Some people got trapped in situations where every choice led to more pain, and they stayed because leaving seemed impossible. Elena had stayed, until she couldn't anymore. They'd buried her on a Tuesday, rain, just like tonight. Victor had stood at her grave and made himself a promise. Never again. Never stand by. Never look away. For 23 years, he'd kept that promise in his own way. The empire he'd built wasn't conventional, wasn't legal, but it had rules. No drugs that destroyed communities, no trafficking, no preying on the vulnerable. Men who violated those rules tended to disappear, quietly and permanently. But he couldn't save everyone. Couldn't fix every broken situation. The world was too big, too brutal, and one man, even a powerful one, could only do so much. So why was he still sitting here 3 blocks from a convenience store, thinking about a girl whose name he barely knew? Because she was fighting back. That hidden phone recording. She hadn't given up. She was gathering ammunition, building a case, planning something. And people who fought back, they were worth saving. Victor pulled out his own phone and dialed a number from memory. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered. "Do you know what time it is?" "Marcus, I need you to run a background check." "Now, Victor, it's 3 a.m. Quick stop convenience store, corner of Amsterdam and 5th. Everything about it. Who owns it? Who manages it? Who works there? Full workup by tomorrow afternoon." A pause. Marcus knew better than to ask why. "Got it. Anything else?" "Yeah. Find out who Briggs is. White male, early 40s, built like a bouncer, works there or connected somehow. I want to know what he does, who he works for, and what leverage exists." "Briggs, common name. You got more?" "Not yet, but I will." Victor ended the call and sat in the silence, watching the rain. He was making a choice here, crossing a line from observer to participant. Once he started down this road, there'd be consequences, complications. Briggs wasn't operating alone. Men like him never did. There'd be a structure, a hierarchy, probably something uglier than simple employee abuse. Getting involved meant uncovering that structure. And once uncovered, Victor's nature wouldn't let him walk away. He'd have to dismantle it. All of it. The smart play was to drive away. Call in an anonymous tip to the police, maybe. Let the system handle it. Except the system didn't handle situations like this. Women like Lena fell through the cracks every day. They filed reports that went nowhere, got restraining orders that meant nothing, tried to escape, and got dragged back. The system was designed for people with resources, with options, with power. Lena had none of those things. But Victor did. He put the car in drive and headed toward his penthouse. Tomorrow, Marcus would deliver the information. And then Victor would decide exactly how deep to dig. What he didn't expect was how much he'd find. By noon the next day, Marcus had earned his considerable salary. They met at Victor's office. Not the legitimate one downtown where Victor Hale Consulting managed investments and business development, but the real one, in a warehouse district where questions weren't asked. The building's exterior looked abandoned. Inside, it was state-of-the-art, secure communications, encrypted servers, soundproofed meeting rooms. Marcus spread papers across the conference table with the methodical precision of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. He was 52, former military intelligence, the kind of detail-oriented that bordered on obsessive. Exactly what Victor needed. Quick stop, Marcus began without preamble. Owned by a shell corporation called Meridian Holdings. Meridian is owned by another shell, which is owned by another shell. But following the money trail, it all leads back to a man named Thomas Castellano. Victor knew that name. Castellano ran a mid-level operation, not powerful enough to challenge Victor's organization, not small enough to ignore. Drugs, mostly. Some gambling. The kind of criminal enterprise that stayed profitable by keeping its head down and its violence contained. Castellano owns a convenience store? Owns 17 of them, all in economically depressed areas, all operating at a loss, at least on paper. Marcus slid over a financial report. They're laundering fronts, obviously. But there's something else going on. Explain. The employee turnover is weird. Most of these places, you'd expect high turnover, minimum wage, night shifts, bad neighborhoods. But Castellano's stores have almost no turnover. People start working there and they stay. Years, in some cases. Loyalty to minimum wage jobs in bad neighborhoods, Victor said slowly. That is weird. Gets weirder. I pulled employment records from the stores. 80% of the employees are women. Single mothers, mostly. Women with criminal records that make legitimate employment difficult. Women with debt problems, immigration issues, custody battles. The kind of vulnerable that makes them easy to control. Victor's voice went cold. He's not running convenience stores. He's running a recruitment center. Marcus nodded. That's my read. Find women in desperate situations, offer them jobs with just enough money to survive but not enough to escape, then use their vulnerability as leverage for something. I haven't figured out what yet. And Briggs? Derek Briggs, ex-military, dishonorable discharge for assault. He's worked for Castellano for 6 years, officially as regional manager for the stores. Unofficially, he's an enforcer. Complaints filed against him by employees, but they always get withdrawn. Couple of restraining orders, both dropped. Pattern suggests intimidation. Victor studied a photo of Briggs, pulled from DMV records. Same hard face he'd seen last night, same violent eyes. What about the girl? Lena Cruz. Marcus pulled out a thin folder. Lena Maria Cruz, 23. Mother died of cancer 2 months ago. Father's not in the picture. She was pre-med at State, had to drop out to care for her mother full-time. Got the job at Quick Stop 9 months ago. Clean record, no red flags, except... He paused, and Victor looked up. Except what? Except she called 911 3 times in the last 4 months. First time reported an assault. Claimed her boyfriend hit her. Cops showed up, boyfriend was gone, she declined to press charges. Second time reported a break-in at her apartment. Nothing stolen, but her place was trashed. Third time she called about a stalking incident, someone following her home from work. All 3 times she started the complaint, then withdrew it within 48 hours. Someone's threatening her, making her back down. That'd be my guess. The boyfriend is a guy named Tommy Vega. Small-time dealer, works for Castellano. He's got priors for domestic violence, assault, possession, real piece of work. Victor felt the familiar cold settling into his chest. The anger that didn't burn hot but froze everything it touched. So Castellano puts vulnerable women to work in his stores, has enforcers like Briggs keep them in line, and uses scumbags like Vega to make sure they stay trapped. That's the skeleton. I'm still figuring out what they're hiding underneath. Dig deeper. I want to know everything. Financials, property records, known associates. Every dirty secret Castellano has buried, and I want to know exactly what leverage he's using on these women. Marcus gathered his papers. How deep are we going with this? It was the question Victor had been asking himself since 3 a.m. How deep? How much was he willing to risk, to expose, to destroy, for a girl he'd met once in a convenience store? Then he remembered Elena's funeral, the rain, the promise. All the way down, Victor said quietly. I want to know everything. And Marcus? Be discreet. If Castellano catches wind that someone's looking into his operation, he'll clean house. And people like Lena will pay the price. Marcus nodded and left. Victor sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by papers documenting one girl's nightmare. 9 months working graveyard shift at a convenience store. 9 months of fear and bruises and withdrawn police reports. 9 months of being trapped in a system designed to keep her there. Victor's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions about the store. This is your only warning. He stared at the message. Castellano had eyes everywhere, apparently. Probably someone in the police department feeding him information about background checks and inquiries. That was fine. Victor had expected that. What Castellano didn't expect was that Victor Hale didn't respond well to warnings. He deleted the text and made another call. Daniel, I need a surveillance team. 2-man rotation, 24/7 coverage. Target is Quick Stop, corner of Amsterdam and 5th. I want to know everyone who goes in and out, especially between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. And I want it invisible. No one can know they're being watched. How long? Until I say stop. You got it, boss. The pieces were moving now. Information gathering, pattern analysis, building a picture of exactly what Lena Cruz was trapped inside. Victor knew from experience that systems like this didn't break easily. They had redundancies, fail-safes, layers of protection. But every system had a weak point. Every structure, no matter how carefully built, had a place where enough pressure applied in exactly the right way would bring the whole thing crashing down. He just had to find it, and then, carefully, precisely, ruthlessly, he'd push. But 3 days later, the surveillance reports started coming in, and Victor realized the situation was worse than he'd thought. Lena worked 5 nights a week, midnight to 8 a.m. On her nights off, another woman worked the same shift. Different face, same fear, same bruises poorly hidden under makeup. The pattern repeated across all of Castellano's stores. Vulnerable women, night shifts, systematic intimidation. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened in the hours between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. When the streets were empty and the cameras weren't watching, men came to the stores. Not many, 2 or 3 per night. They'd park in the back, use the rear entrance, disappear inside for 20 to 30 minutes, then leave. The surveillance team got license plates, ran them, and the results painted an ugly picture. Businessmen, lawyers, a city councilman, even a police lieutenant, upstanding citizens, all with one thing in common. They were paying for something they didn't want anyone to know about. Prostitution ring, Marcus said, laying out the evidence in Victor's office. Has to be. Castellano's using the stores as fronts. Brings in vulnerable women, gets them desperate enough to agree to anything, then sells access to clients who pay premium prices for discretion. Victor felt his jaw tighten. The women working there? Do they have a choice? Does it matter? They're desperate, in debt, threatened if they try to leave. Maybe technically they agreed, but what kind of choice is that? No choice at all, that was the answer. The same kind of choice Elena had faced. Cooperate or watch everything you love get destroyed. I want Lena Cruz under protection, Victor said, quietly. She can't know, but I want someone watching her whenever she's not at work. If Vega or Briggs or anyone else goes near her, I want to know immediately. You're getting personally involved in this. It wasn't a question, but Victor answered anyway. Yes. Why? You don't know this girl. We've got our own operations to worry about. Castellano's organization doesn't intersect with ours. There's no business reason to provoke him. Consider it a moral reason. Marcus sighed. Moral reasons get messy. Most things worth doing are messy. For the next week, Victor watched Lena's life from a distance. His surveillance team, professionals who could ghost through a city without leaving a trace, documented everything. Lena lived in a one-bedroom apartment in a building that should have been condemned. Water damage on the ceiling, mold in the corners, heating that worked maybe half the time. Rent was $1,200 a month, which on her quick-stop salary meant she was barely scraping by. Tommy Vega showed up 3 or 4 times a week, usually drunk, always aggressive. The surveillance audio caught arguments, crying, the sound of things breaking. Twice, neighbors called the police. Both times, by the time cops arrived, Vega was gone and Lena insisted everything was fine. She visited her mother's grave every Sunday, sat there for an hour, talking to the headstone. The surveillance team felt uncomfortable watching those moments, but they reported them anyway. That was the job. During the day, she slept. At night, she worked. The same cycle, over and over, with no apparent way out, except on Wednesday nights. Every Wednesday, like clockwork, Lena deviated from her routine. Instead of going straight home after her shift, she went to a public library 3 miles away. She'd spend exactly 2 hours there using one of their computers, printing documents, taking notes in a spiral notebook she kept hidden in her bag. Victor's curiosity got the better of him. He had Daniel pull the library's computer logs for the terminal Lena used. Legal websites, paralegal forums, court filing procedures, know your rights documentation for domestic abuse victims. She was researching, learning, building a case, probably against Vega, maybe against Briggs in the store, gathering evidence with that hidden phone, documenting abuse, preparing to fight back through the only system available to her. It would never work. Victor knew that with absolute certainty. The system Lena was trying to navigate, restraining orders, criminal complaints, civil litigation, it was designed for people with resources. Lawyers cost money she didn't have. Vega would disappear the moment charges were filed, then come back when they were dropped. Briggs had Castellano's protection. The evidence she was gathering would disappear, or get ruled inadmissible, or simply get ignored by prosecutors who had bigger cases to worry about. She'd spend months, maybe years, fighting through legal channels that would ultimately fail her. And by the time she realized the system wasn't going to save her, it would be too late. Unless someone intervened, someone with the resources, the knowledge, and the willingness to operate outside the system she was trapped inside. Victor made a decision. He called Marcus. Set up a meeting with Castellano. Neutral ground, just him and me. Tell him I have a business proposition. That's going to raise questions. We don't do business with his organization. Tell him I'm reconsidering that policy. Make it sound believable. What are you planning? I'm going to give him a chance to do the right thing. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, and when he doesn't take it? Then I'll do what I should have done a week ago. The meeting was set for Friday night in a restaurant Castellano owned. Italian place in Little Italy, the kind with checked tablecloths and pictures of Sicily on the walls. Victor arrived early, sat at a table in the back, and waited. Thomas Castellano walked in 20 minutes late, flanked by 2 bodyguards who looked like they'd been grown in a lab specifically to break things. Castellano himself was 60, silver-haired, dressed in an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the fact that he'd gone soft around the middle. He had the face of someone who'd spent decades convincing himself that the terrible things he did were actually justified. "Victor Hale," Castellano said, sitting down across from him. The bodyguards positioned themselves nearby, trying to look casual and failing. "This is unexpected. We don't usually run in the same circles." "Thought it was time to fix that," Victor replied smoothly. "Your operation is efficient, professional. I respect that." Flattery. Castellano ate it up. "We do all right. But you didn't ask for this meeting to complement my business model. What do you want?" "Information, mostly. I'm looking to diversify, expand into some of your territories. But I don't want to step on toes, start any unnecessary conflicts. Figured it was smarter to talk first." Castellano relaxed slightly. This was familiar ground. Territory negotiations, profit-sharing arrangements. The standard dance of criminals dividing up a city. What territories are we talking about? The convenience stores. I've been watching your operation. It's clever, legitimate business fronts, steady cash flow, good community presence. I want in. Now Castellano's eyes narrowed. Those stores aren't for sale. I'm not asking to buy them. Partnership. You keep running the day-to-day, I provide additional security, help expand the operation. We split the profits. What makes you think I need a partner? Victor leaned back in his chair, maintaining eye contact. Because you're running a prostitution ring out of convenience stores, which means you're either brave or stupid, and I haven't decided which. The exposure alone is insane. Cameras, witnesses, police patrols. One girl gets brave enough to go to the media instead of the cops, and your whole operation collapses. Castellano's face went hard. The bodyguard shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Careful, Victor said softly. We're having a conversation. No need for theatrics. You come into my restaurant and accuse me of, but I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm acknowledging what we both know is true. You've got a good system. Find desperate women, trap them with debt and fear, then monetize their desperation. It's profitable. It's also risky. I'm offering to help mitigate that risk. Silence. Castellano stared at him, recalculating. Finally, you're not here to partner. So what do you really want? Victor allowed a small smile. I want you to shut down the prostitution ring. Keep the stores as legitimate businesses, pay your employees fairly, and stop using men like Derek Briggs to terrorize women. Castellano laughed. Actually laughed, loud and genuine. Are you serious right now? Completely. Why the hell would I do that? Because I'm asking nicely, and because if you don't, I'll dismantle your entire organization piece by piece until there's nothing left. The laughter died. Castellano's face went cold. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice. The smart one, walk away from this particular business. The stupid one, find out what happens when you ignore my offer. You think you scare me? I've been in this game longer than you've been alive. Then you should be smart enough to recognize when someone's giving you an exit ramp. Victor stood up, adjusting his cufflinks. I'm not interested in destroying you, Castellano. I'm interested in stopping one specific part of your operation. The part that preys on vulnerable women. Shut it down and we go back to ignoring each other. Keep it running, and I become your biggest problem. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Castellano? If anything happens to any of those women, accidents, sudden disappearances, anything at all, I'll assume you made your choice, and I'll respond accordingly. Victor walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Behind him, he could feel Castellano's rage like heat from a fire. The smart play would have been to take the offer, shut down the prostitution ring, keep the legitimate money laundering operations, avoid a war with someone powerful enough to cause real damage. But Victor knew men like Castellano. They didn't respond well to ultimatums, even politely phrased ones. They saw compromise as weakness, and they especially didn't like being told what to do by someone they considered a peer. Castellano would escalate. He'd double down, maybe target Victor's operations in retaliation, definitely increase security around the stores and the women, which was exactly what Victor had counted on, because angry people made mistakes. And Victor needed Castellano to make a mistake big enough to justify what came next. He didn't have to wait long. The mistake arrived Saturday night, delivered in the form of a black SUV pulling up to Lena Cruz's apartment building while she was asleep. To be continued, Victor's phone rang at 2:47 a.m., the exact time he'd first walked into that convenience store. He answered before the second ring. We've got a problem. Daniel's voice was tight with controlled urgency. Black SUV just pulled up to Lena Cruz's building. 3 men got out. They're heading inside now. Victor was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his keys. Where's our protection detail? Following protocol. Observe and report. You said keep it invisible. New protocol? Intervene. I'm 10 minutes out. Boss, if we blow our cover, I don't care. Stop them. He took the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator, hitting the parking garage at a dead run. The Mercedes roared to life, and he punched the accelerator, tires screaming against concrete as he rocketed toward the exit. 10 minutes. The city was empty at this hour, traffic lights blinking yellow at deserted intersections. Victor ran every single one of them, the engine growling as he pushed the car past 80 on residential streets that were supposed to have a 35-mile-per-hour limit. His phone rang again. Daniel. They're in her apartment. Kick the door down. Our guys are moving in, but Victor heard shouting through the phone, a woman screaming, then a gunshot, sharp and final. His blood went cold. Daniel! Not her. Not her. One of Castellano's guys went down. Our team engaged. It's turning into a firefight. Get her out of there, now! He was 5 minutes away. 4. The apartment building came into view, a decrepit 6-story structure with bars on the windows and dreams that had died decades ago. The black SUV sat at the curb, engine running, driver still inside. Victor pulled up behind it, blocking it in. The driver saw him coming, reached for something, probably a weapon, but Victor was faster. He ripped open the driver's door, grabbed the man by his collar, and slammed his head into the steering wheel. Once, twice. The driver slumped, unconscious. Inside the building, Victor could hear chaos, shouting, running footsteps, someone crying. He took the stairs 3 at a time, following the sound of destruction to the 3rd floor. Lena's apartment door hung off its hinges. Inside, the place looked like a hurricane had torn through it. Furniture overturned, glass everywhere, bullet holes in the walls. 2 of Castellano's men lay on the floor, one unconscious, one very obviously dead. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading across cheap linoleum in a dark stain. Daniel stood in the doorway to the bedroom, weapon drawn, blocking the entrance. She's in here. She's okay. Victor pushed past him. The bedroom was small, cramped, dominated by a bed that took up most of the space. Lena sat on it, knees pulled to her chest, shaking so violently it looked like she might come apart. She wore pajamas, flannel pants, and an oversized t-shirt, and her face was streaked with tears and terror. When she saw Victor, confusion flickered across her features. Recognition, then more confusion. You, she whispered. The cigarette guy. My name is Victor. We need to leave, right now. What's happening? Why are you... Her eyes went to the body in the living room and she made a strangled sound. Oh my God! Oh my God! He's not your problem anymore. But his friends are going to come looking, which means staying here is suicide. You have 30 seconds to grab anything you absolutely can't live without. She didn't move. Shock, probably. The aftermath of adrenaline, the brain shutting down when confronted with too much violence too fast. Victor crouched in front of her, making eye contact. Lena, listen to me. I know you're scared. I know this doesn't make sense. But those men came here to hurt you, maybe kill you. And the person who sent them isn't going to stop just because this attempt failed. So you have a choice. Come with me and live, or stay here and see what happens when they send more. Why would you help me? I don't even know you. Because someone should have helped my sister, and no one did. 30 seconds, Lena. Clock's ticking. Something in his voice must have cut through the shock. She stumbled off the bed, grabbed a backpack from the closet, started shoving clothes into it. No organization, just panic-driven efficiency. Clothes, a photograph in a frame, a jewelry box, toiletries from the bathroom. 20 seconds, Victor said. I need my laptop. It's under the bed. Daniel retrieved it, handed it to her. She clutched it like a lifeline. Time's up. Let's go. They made it down to the street just as sirens became audible in the distance. Someone had called the cops. Neighbors, probably, woken by gunshots and screaming. Victor's team was already gone. Professionals knew when to disappear. The unconscious driver was gone too, dragged away by whoever Castellano had stationed nearby as backup. Victor opened the Mercedes' passenger door. Get in. Lena hesitated. She was standing on a sidewalk at 3 a.m, surrounded by the wreckage of her life, being told to get into a stranger's car. Every survival instinct she had was probably screaming danger, but the sirens were getting closer, and the alternative was explaining to the police why her apartment looked like a war zone and who the dead man in her living room was. She got in. Victor pulled away from the curb just as the first patrol car rounded the corner 2 blocks back. He drove carefully now, obeying every traffic law, nothing to attract attention. Just another car on empty streets, completely unremarkable. Lena sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now. She turned to look at him, and for the first time he saw something other than fear in her expression. Anger, sharp and fierce. Who are you? And don't give me some cryptic bullshit about cigarettes and helping strangers. Nobody does what you just did without a reason. Victor kept his eyes on the road. You're right, I had a reason. Which is? I saw you at the store, saw the bruises, saw how afraid you were, not of me, but of what came after. Reminded me of someone I lost. So I started looking into your situation. Found out things were worse than I thought. And then I tried to fix it the civilized way. What's the civilized way? I went to the man who runs the prostitution ring you're trapped in, asked him nicely to shut it down. He declined. Apparently he decided to send you a message instead. Lena went very still. You know about that. I know about a lot of things. The stores, Castellano's operation, Briggs, your boyfriend Tommy, the hidden phone you've been using to record evidence. He glanced at her. I know you've been trying to fight back. I also know you're going to lose because the system you're using is designed to fail people like you. People like me. People without power, without resources. People who play by rules that were written by people who don't give a damn if you live or die. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, so what? You're my savior now? My knight in expensive Italian shoes? No, I'm just someone who decided to do something instead of nothing. Whether that makes me your savior or just another problem is still up for debate. I didn't ask for this. Most people don't ask for help. They're too proud or too scared or too beaten down to believe help is even possible. But you needed it anyway. Lena looked out the window. They were heading toward the industrial district now, buildings getting larger and more spread out. Where are you taking me? A property I own, secure, off the books. You'll be safe there while we figure out the next move. We? You and me. Because this isn't over, Lena. Castellano tried to kill you tonight, or scare you, or drag you back to the store. Doesn't matter which. What matters is he's not going to stop. And that means you can't go back to your apartment, can't go back to work, can't go anywhere near your old life. I don't have anywhere else to go. You do now. The safe house was the loft in a converted factory building, top floor, accessible only by a freight elevator that required a key card. Victor led Lena inside and watched her take in the space. It was sparse but comfortable, large open area with exposed brick, industrial windows, furniture that was functional rather than decorative, a bedroom behind a sliding door, bathroom with a shower that actually had decent water pressure, kitchen stocked with non-perishable food. You can stay here as long as you need, Victor said. No one knows about this place except me and 2 other people I trust. You'll be safe. Lena set her backpack down slowly, looking around like she expected something to jump out at her. And what do you want in return? Nothing. Bullshit. Nobody helps for free, especially not guys who show up with armed men and make bodies disappear. Victor almost smiled. Even terrified and traumatized, she was sharp, suspicious, good. Suspicion kept people alive. You're right, he said. I do want something. I want you to tell me everything you know about Castellano's operation. Every detail, every name, every transaction, everything you've recorded on that phone. Because I'm going to dismantle his entire organization, and your information is going to help me do it. Why? Why go through all this trouble for some girl you don't even know? Because men like Castellano destroy lives for profit. Because women like you get trapped in systems designed to keep them powerless. And because a long time ago, I promised someone I'd never stand by and watch it happen again. Lena studied his face. Your sister. Yes. What happened to her? She trusted the wrong man, ended up in a situation not that different from yours. By the time anyone realized how bad it was too late to save her. I'm sorry. Victor shook his head. Don't be. Just help me make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. She was quiet for a moment. Then she walked to her backpack, pulled out the laptop, and set it on the kitchen counter. I've been documenting everything for 9 months. Names, dates, transactions, video recordings from the hidden phone. I was going to turn it all over to the police once I had enough evidence. The police won't help you. Half of them are on Castellano's payroll. I know. I figured that out after the 3rd time my complaints disappeared. She opened the laptop, fingers moving across the keyboard. But I had to try something. I couldn't just accept it. Accept that this was my life now. Victor moved to stand beside her. The screen filled with folders, meticulously organized. Dates, locations, participant names. How much do you have? Everything. Every client who came through the back door. Every payment Briggs collected. Every threat, every assault, every moment of the nightmare they turned that job into. Her voice shook. I thought if I could just gather enough proof, someone would have to listen. Someone would have to do something. Someone will. Me. She looked up at him. You're not a cop. No. I'm something better. I'm someone who doesn't have to follow rules that protect men like Castellano. You're a criminal. Yes. The honesty seemed to surprise her. Most people in Victor's position would have danced around it, used euphemisms, pretended to be something other than what they were. But Victor had learned a long time ago that lies were exhausting, and truth was simpler. So what? Lena said slowly. You're going to use my evidence to, what? Blackmail him? Kill him? I'm going to use your evidence to understand his operation completely, and then I'm going to take it apart piece by piece until there's nothing left. Briggs, Vega, every enforcer and client and corrupt cop on his payroll. All of it. That's going to start a war. Probably. People will die. They will. And you're okay with that? Victor met her eyes. I'm okay with protecting people who can't protect themselves. If that means some bad people die in the process, I can live with it. Can you? Lena looked back at her laptop screen, at the folders full of evidence she'd risked her life to collect. The men who came tonight, they were going to kill me, weren't they? Or worse. Because of you? Because you threatened Castellano? Probably. Or maybe they were coming anyway, and my involvement just accelerated the timeline. Either way, you can't go back. This is your life now, at least until Castellano's organization is gone. She closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking again. I don't know if I can do this. If I can be part of whatever you're planning. You don't have to be part of anything. Give me the information, stay here where it's safe, and let me handle the rest. And then what? When it's over? Then you get your life back. On your terms. No Castellano, no Briggs, no Vega. Just you and whatever future you want to build. You make it sound simple. It's not. It's going to be complicated and messy and probably take longer than either of us wants. But the alternative is spending the rest of your life running, looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next attack. Lena walked to the window, looking out over the industrial district. The sky was starting to lighten. Not quite dawn, but close. I had plans, before all of this. I was going to be a doctor, help people, make a difference. You still can. Can I? Because right now it feels like my life is completely out of my control, like I'm just a passenger in someone else's story. Victor understood that feeling. He'd felt it himself, years ago, standing at Elena's grave. Powerless, reactive, watching terrible things happen and being unable to stop them. Then take control back, he said. Help me destroy the people who trapped you. And when it's done, go back to school, become that doctor, help people, but do it knowing you're the one who chose it, not because someone allowed you to. She turned from the window. You really think we can win? I know we can. I've been doing this a long time, Lena. I know how to fight. I know how to win. And I know how to make sure people like Castellano never get a chance to hurt anyone again. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll help you. I'll give you everything I have. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start planning. But Lena didn't move toward the bedroom. Instead, she stayed by the window, arms wrapped around herself. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Your sister, Elena, did she ask for help? Before it was too late? Victor felt the old familiar pain, sharp and immediate. No, she tried to handle it herself. Thought she could fix it or escape it or survive it. By the time she realized she couldn't, she was too ashamed to ask. That's what they do to you, Lena said softly. The Briggses and Vegas and Castellanos of the world. They make you feel like it's your fault, like you deserve it, like asking for help means admitting you're weak. You're not weak. You've been fighting this whole time. Fighting and losing. Until now. She looked at him. You're sure about this? Sure you want to go to war over some girl you don't know? Victor thought about Elena. About the funeral. About 23 years of keeping a promise. about all the times he'd looked away from suffering because it wasn't his problem, wasn't his business, wasn't worth the trouble. "I'm sure," he said. Lena nodded slowly. Then she picked up her laptop and brought it to the couch, opening it again. "Then we should start now, because if we're going to do this, we need to do it right." For the next 4 hours, as the sun rose over the industrial district and the city woke up to another day, Lena walked Victor through 9 months of documented horror. Every name, every face, every transaction, the clients who paid premium prices for discretion, the cops who looked the other way, the politicians who provided legal cover, the enforcers who made sure no one talked, and at the center of it all, Thomas Castellano, running his empire with the casual cruelty of someone who'd never faced real consequences. By the time they finished, Victor had a complete picture, not just of Castellano's prostitution ring, but of the entire corrupt ecosystem that supported it. Judges who dismissed cases, prosecutors who declined to file charges, business owners who provided cover, an entire network of complicity and exploitation. "Jesus," Victor muttered, scrolling through the files. "This is bigger than I thought." "That's why I didn't know how to fight it," Lena said. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, voice hoarse from talking. "Every time I tried to go through proper channels, I hit another wall. Another person on his payroll, another system designed to protect him. The systems aren't going to help us, so we use different tools." "What kind of tools?" Victor pulled out his phone and started making calls. First Marcus, who answered on the second ring despite it being barely past dawn. "I need everything on Castellano's financial network. Bank accounts, shell companies, properties, investments. Every place he's hiding money." "That's going to take time." "You have 48 hours. "Victor, 48 hours, Marcus, and I need the legal team ready to move. We're going to bury him in litigation. Environmental violations, tax fraud, labor law violations, building code issues. Every property he owns, every business he runs. I want him drowning in legal trouble. You're going scorched earth, completely. Oh, and Marcus? Start reaching out to his clients, the ones Lena identified. Politicians, businessmen, cops. Let them know we have evidence of their involvement. Give them a choice. Cooperate with us, or we release everything." Marcus whistled low. "That's going to cause a panic." "Good. Panic makes people sloppy. Call me when you have the financials." The next call was to Daniel. "I need a complete security detail on Lena Cruz. Armed 24/7. She doesn't go anywhere without protection." "Done." "What about Castellano? You want surveillance on him?" "Already got it, but I want pressure. I want him to know we're watching. Make it obvious. I want him paranoid." "You're trying to provoke him." "I'm trying to make him desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." The third call was to someone Lena didn't recognize. A woman's voice answered, crisp and professional. "Catherine, I need you to prepare for multiple clients. Women who've been victimized by Thomas Castellano's organization. They're going to need legal representation, counseling, relocation assistance, whatever it takes." "How many women are we talking about?" Victor looked at Lena's documentation. "At least 30, maybe more." "That's a lot of resources." "I'll cover all costs. Just make sure they're taken care of." "You're rescuing an entire prostitution ring?" "I'm giving them a choice to leave. What they do with it is up to them." He ended the call and looked at Lena. "You're not the only one trapped in this. There are dozens of other women working at those stores, all in similar situations. Once we move against Castellano, they're going to be vulnerable. We need to get them out first." "How?" "We offer them what Castellano never did, a real choice. Money, legal help, new identities if they need them. Whatever it takes to get them clear before this turns into an all-out war." Lena stared at him. "You're really going to save all of them?" "I'm going to try. No guarantees. Some of them might be too afraid to leave. Some might be too invested in the system. But the ones who want out, yeah, we're getting them out. This is going to cost a fortune. I have a fortune. Might as well use it for something worthwhile." She shook her head slowly. "I don't understand you. You're a criminal. You've probably done terrible things. But you're sitting here planning to rescue 30 women you've never met." "People are complicated," Victor said. "I've done terrible things, yes. Hurt people who deserved it, and probably some who didn't. Built an empire on violence and fear and money that didn't come from anywhere legal. But that doesn't mean I can't also do something good. Doesn't mean I can't look at a situation like this and decide to fix it. Why though? Why care? Victor thought about how to answer that. He could tell her about Elena again, but that wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was messier, more complicated. Because someone has to, he said finally. Because the world is full of predators and victims, and somewhere along the way, I decided I'd rather fight for the victims, even if I am a predator myself. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mother used to say that people aren't good or bad. They're just people making choices. Sometimes good ones, sometimes bad ones. Your mother sounds like she was smart. She was. Right up until the cancer ate through her brain and she forgot who I was. Lena's voice cracked. I used to sit by her bed and she'd look at me like I was a stranger, like I was some nurse she didn't recognize. And I'd think, this is what happens when you give everything to take care of someone. You lose yourself piece by piece until there's nothing left. Is that what happened? You lost yourself? I don't know. Maybe. I dropped out of school to care for her. Couldn't work a normal job because I needed to be available whenever she needed me. The medical bills piled up, the debt collectors started calling, and then she died, and I was alone with a mountain of debt and no degree and no prospects. That's when I found the job at Quick Stop. And Castellano saw an opportunity. They all did. Briggs, Tommy, even the customers who came through that back door. They saw someone desperate and alone and they took advantage. She looked down at her hands. I let them. That's the part I can't forgive myself for. I knew what was happening, knew it was wrong, but I was so tired of fighting, so tired of losing, that I just gave up. You didn't give up. You documented everything, built a case, kept fighting even when it seemed hopeless. Fat lot of good it did me. It did more good than you know. That evidence is going to destroy Castellano, going to save those other women, going to make sure this never happens again. Lena looked at him with exhausted eyes. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? She leaned back against the couch, closing her eyes. I'm so tired. Then sleep. We've got a long road ahead, and you're going to need your strength. What about you? I've got work to do. Planning, coordinating, making sure all the pieces are in place before we move. When do we move? Victor checked his watch. It was just past 10 in the morning. Castellano would be waking up right about now, probably getting reports about the failed hit on Lena, trying to figure out what went wrong. Soon, Victor said. Very soon. Lena opened her eyes. I want to be part of it. When you take him down, I want to be there. That's not a good idea. I don't care. This is my fight too. I deserve to see it through. Victor wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that revenge was dangerous, that being present for violence changed you in ways you couldn't anticipate. But he looked at her face and saw something he recognized, the same hard determination he'd felt standing at Elena's grave, the need to see justice done, even if it meant getting your hands dirty. Okay, he said, but you follow my lead. Do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. No heroics, no improvisation. Agreed? Agreed. Then get some rest. Tomorrow we start hitting Castellano where it hurts, and by the time we're done, he's going to wish he'd taken my offer when he had the chance. Lena stood up, swaying slightly with exhaustion. She made it halfway to the bedroom before turning back. Victor? Yeah? Thank you for this, for everything. I know I'm supposed to be suspicious and careful and not trust anyone, but thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when it's over and you're still alive. She smiled faintly. Deal. Then she disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Victor heard the bed creak as she collapsed onto it, probably asleep before her head hit the pillow. He sat alone in the quiet loft, looking at the evidence Lena had compiled. 9 months of horror, neatly organized into folders. Names and faces of men who thought they were untouchable. A system built on suffering and maintained through fear. Victor had destroyed systems before, knew how to find the weak points, apply pressure, watch the whole structure collapse. But this felt different, more personal. Not just business, but a moral reckoning. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Castellano's putting out feelers, wants to know who hit his crew last night. Word is spreading that someone's making a move on his territory. Victor typed back. Let him wonder. Keep the pressure on. Another text, this one from Daniel. Security detail in place, your girl's covered. But boss Castellano's mobilizing. He's pulling in reinforcements, increasing security on his properties. He knows something big is coming. Good. Let him prepare. Won't matter. Victor poured himself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Castellano was panicking, trying to figure out who was coming for him and why, making calls, moving money, preparing for war. He had no idea that the war was already over. He'd lost the moment he sent those men to Lena's apartment. Lost the moment he underestimated Victor's commitment to seeing this through. All that remained now was the execution. And Victor had always been very, very good at executing plans. The first domino fell at 6 a.m. the next morning when federal agents raided 3 of Castellano's warehouses simultaneously. Victor watched the news coverage from his office, drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The reporters didn't know what they were looking at. Just another drug bust, routine law enforcement. But Victor knew better. Those warehouses held Castellano's distribution network, his inventory, his entire supply chain for the legitimate businesses that masked the uglier operations underneath. Marcus walked in without knocking, dropping a thick folder on the desk. The financials you wanted. Turns out Castellano's been very creative with his accounting. Victor flipped through the pages. Shell companies nested inside other shell companies. Money flowing through accounts in 3 different countries. Properties held under names that didn't technically exist. It was sophisticated work, the kind that took years to build and millions to maintain. How much can we freeze? With the right legal pressure. About 60% of his liquid assets. The rest is going to take time. We don't have time. Castellano's going to start liquidating the moment he realizes we're coming for his money. I need those accounts frozen today. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You have a federal judge in your pocket I don't know about? Better. I have 3 of Castellano's clients who are federal judges, and they're all very motivated to cooperate right now. The blackmail's already working? Blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer mutually beneficial arrangements. Victor closed the folder. How many of the women have accepted our offer? 18 out of 32. The others are too scared to leave, or they don't believe it's real, or they think Castellano will find them anyway. He will, if we don't move fast enough. What about safe houses? Catherine's got them set up, different cities, different states, new identities for the ones who need them. It's costing a fortune. Good. Money well spent. Victor stood, stretching muscles that had gone stiff from sitting too long. He hadn't slept in 36 hours and could feel it in his bones, but sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. What about Briggs? Still at his apartment, hasn't left since the raid this morning. He's spooked. He should be. Send someone to talk to him, make him an offer. What kind of offer? The kind where he testifies against Castellano in exchange for a reduced sentence and witness protection. He's going down either way, but he can choose how hard he lands. Marcus made a note on his phone. And if he refuses? Then he finds out what happens to people who hurt women for a living. There was a knock at the door. Daniel poked his head in. Boss, you've got a visitor. Says it's urgent. Who? Tommy Vega. Victor felt something cold settle in his chest. Vega. The boyfriend. The one who'd been hitting Lena, threatening her, keeping her trapped. The piece of human garbage who thought violence made him powerful. Send him in, Victor said quietly. Marcus shot him a look. You sure that's a good idea? Probably not. Do it anyway. Tommy Vega walked into the office like he owned it, all swagger and false confidence. He was younger than Victor expected, maybe 26, 27, with the kind of wiry build that came from nervous energy rather than actual strength. Tattoos crawled up his neck, cheap ink that probably cost $50 at some sketchy parlor. His eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated, high on something, or maybe just running on adrenaline and stupidity. You Victor Hale? Vega asked. I am. You're Tommy Vega. Yeah, we need to talk. About? About you backing the fuck off my girlfriend. Victor almost laughed. Almost. Your girlfriend? You mean Lena Cruz, the woman you've been beating for the past 9 months? Vega's face twisted. That's between me and her. Ain't none of your business. See, that's where you're wrong. It became my business the moment Castellano sent 3 men to kill her. which coincidentally happened right after I told Castellano to shut down his operation. So now I'm wondering, did you know about the hit? Did you help set it up? I don't know what you're talking about. No? Let me refresh your memory. Saturday night, around 2:45 a.m., 3 armed men kicked down Lena's apartment door. One of them died in her living room. The other 2 ran when my people showed up. And somehow, within 12 hours, you knew exactly who to come looking for. So either you're psychic or you knew the hit was coming. Vega's hand moved toward his waistband. Victor didn't flinch. Behind Vega, Daniel had already drawn his weapon, aimed at the back of the kid's head. I wouldn't, Victor said calmly. You pull that gun, you die before it clears the holster. And then I dump your body in the river and tell Castellano you got greedy. So let's skip the macho posturing and get to the part where you tell me what you want. Vega's hand froze. He was stupid, but not quite stupid enough to draw on 3 armed men in a room with no exits. I want Lena back. That's not going to happen. She's mine. You had no right. She's not property, and you have no rights. You lost those when you started using her as a punching bag. She tell you that? She's a lying bitch. I never... Victor was out of his chair and across the room before Marcus could blink. He grabbed Vega by the throat and slammed him against the wall hard enough to rattle the framed diplomas. Vega's eyes went wide with shock and sudden, genuine fear. Listen very carefully, Victor said, his voice flat and cold. You're going to walk out of here, get in whatever piece of shit car you drove over in, and disappear. You're going to leave this city, leave this state, and never speak Lena's name again. Because if I see you anywhere near her, if I hear you've been asking about her, if you even think about her too loud, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your very short life regretting it. Do you understand? Vega tried to nod, couldn't move his head with Victor's hand around his throat. He made a choking sound. I said, do you understand? Yes, Vega gasped. Yes, I understand. Victor released him. Vega collapsed against the wall, coughing and wheezing. When he looked up, there was murder in his eyes, but also fear. The recognition that he was way out of his depth, playing a game he didn't understand with people who didn't bluff. Get out, Victor said. Vega stumbled toward the door, shooting one last hateful look over his shoulder. Castellano's going to kill you for this. He can try. The door slammed shut. Marcus let out a long breath. That went well. He'll run straight to Castellano. Tell him everything. That was the point? That was the point. I want Castellano to know exactly who's coming for him. I want him scared. Scared people make mistakes. Daniel holstered his weapon. Speaking of mistakes, Vega's going to be a problem. He's not smart enough to know when to quit. Then we'll handle him when the time comes. Right now, he's a message, a warning to Castellano that his entire network is compromised. Victor's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered it anyway. You're making a very big mistake, Castellano's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. Am I? Seems like everything's going according to plan so far. You raided my warehouses, froze my accounts, turned my employees against me. Do you have any idea what you've started? A war. I believe I mentioned that possibility during our last conversation. This isn't a war. This is suicide. You think you can just walk into my territory, steal my people, destroy my business? You think there won't be consequences? Victor sat down, leaning back in his chair. The consequences started the moment you sent men to kill Lena Cruz. Everything that's happened since then is just the bill coming due. That girl is none of your concern. See, you keep saying that, but I've made her my concern, along with the other 31 women you've been exploiting. How many of them have left already, Thomas? How many chose freedom over fear? Silence on the other end, long enough that Victor knew he'd struck a nerve. You can't protect them all, Castellano said finally. And when I find them, and I will find them, they're going to wish they'd stayed where they belonged. Empty threats. Your organization is falling apart. Your money's frozen. Your people are flipping. Your clients are scrambling to cover their asses. You've got maybe 48 hours before the whole thing collapses completely. Then I guess I better make those 48 hours count. The line went dead. Marcus looked at Victor. That sounded like a threat. It was. He's going to come after us directly, probably tonight. We should increase security, pull everyone in, fortify the position. No, we go on offense. Hit the rest of his properties, shut down every operation he's got running. I want him so busy putting out fires he doesn't have time to plan an attack. That's risky. We'll be spread thin. So will he. And we've got better resources, better intel, and better motivation. Victor pulled up a map on his computer, marking locations across the city. These are his remaining revenue streams: the restaurants, the pawn shops, the massage parlors. We hit them all simultaneously. Code violations, health department inspections, IRS audits, death by bureaucracy. And when he retaliates, then we'll be ready. But being ready didn't mean knowing what was coming. Victor had played this game long enough to know that even the best plans fell apart when someone desperate got creative. And Castellano was definitely desperate. The retaliation came at 11 p.m., while Victor was reviewing legal documents in his office. Not an attack on him directly, but something worse. His phone rang. Catherine, the lawyer handling the relocated women. Victor, we have a problem. One of the safe houses was hit. 3 armed men broke in about 20 minutes ago. Victor's blood went cold. Casualties? No, thank God. Our security team was there. They held them off until the police arrived. But Victor, they knew exactly where to go. Which house? Which women? Someone gave them the location. A leak. Has to be. Only 5 people knew those addresses. You, me, Marcus, Daniel, and Lena. Lena. No, that was impossible. She'd been at the safe house all day, under armed guard, with no access to the outside world except through Victor's people. Unless. Her laptop, Victor said quietly. She's been using her laptop. To do what? Research, documentation. She's been compiling evidence for months. What if Castellano had surveillance software installed? What if he's been monitoring everything she did? Then he knows everything, every plan, every location, every person involved. Victor was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his keys. Get everyone moved, now. Different locations, don't tell anyone where. Use burner phones only. And Catherine, assume every communication is compromised until I say otherwise. He ran to the parking garage, dialing Lena's number as he went. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. The drive to the industrial loft took 12 minutes, running every red light, the Mercedes' engine screaming as he pushed it past 90 on streets that weren't designed for that kind of speed. The security details should have been there, 2 armed guards, 24/7 coverage. They should have answered the phone when he called, should have responded to his texts. The freight elevator seemed to take an eternity. Victor's hand rested on the gun holstered under his jacket, safety off, ready for whatever he found upstairs. The elevator doors opened onto chaos. The loft's main door hung off its hinges. Inside, furniture was overturned, glass everywhere. One of the security guards lay unconscious near the entrance, blood running from a gash on his head. The other guard was nowhere to be seen, and Lena was gone. Victor's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo. Lena, tied to a chair in what looked like a basement somewhere. Her face was bruised, blood running from her nose. And standing behind her, smiling at the camera, was Derek Briggs. Below the photo, a message. You want her back? Come to the quick stop, alone. 1 hour, or we start cutting pieces off. Victor stared at the photo, feeling the cold rage settle in. Not the hot anger that made people stupid, but the frozen kind that made him dangerous. They'd taken her, walked right through his security, into a place only a handful of people knew about, and taken her. Which meant the leak wasn't the laptop, it was someone on his team. He dialed Marcus. Where are you? Home? Why? What's wrong? Someone hit the loft, took Lena. You know anything about that? A pause. Too long. What are you implying? I'm implying that only 5 people knew where she was, and right now you're a suspect. So I'll ask again, do you know anything about this? No. Jesus, Victor, you think I'd... After everything we've been through, you think I'd betray you? Victor wanted to believe him. Marcus had been with him for 15 years through wars and deals and situations that should have gotten them both killed, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. I don't know what to think, but I'm going to find out, and if I discover you had anything to do with this, loyalty won't save you. He ended the call before Marcus could respond. Then he dialed Daniel. The loft was compromised. Someone gave up the location. I need you to find out who. Boss, that's a short list. You really think one of us, I don't know, but someone talked. And when I find out who, they're going to wish they hadn't. In the meantime, I need a tactical team, full gear, ready to move in 30 minutes. You're going after her. I'm going to get her back. And then I'm going to kill everyone responsible. They said come alone. But they can say whatever they want. I'm bringing an army. But as Victor drove toward the quick stop, he knew the tactical team was insurance, not the solution. Castellano would be expecting a frontal assault, would have the place wired, guards positioned, probably hostages to make things complicated. A straight fight would get Lena killed. So Victor needed to be smarter, needed to think like someone who'd spent 30 years surviving in a world that killed people who made mistakes. He parked 3 blocks away, in the shadows of an abandoned building. The tactical team, 6 men, heavily armed, wearing body armor, waited in a van nearby. Victor pulled on his own vest, checked his weapon, then pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 5 years. It rang once. I wondered when you'd call. The voice was female, measured, with the faint trace of an accent Victor had never been able to place. I need a favor, Natasha. You always need favors. That's why you stopped calling. Too much debt, not enough repayment. This is different. They're always different. What makes this one special? A girl's life, hostage situation. I need eyes inside a building before I go in. Surveillance? Thermal imaging, structural scan, personnel count, everything you can give me in 20 minutes. That's not a favor, Victor. That's a miracle. And miracles are expensive. Name your price. A pause. Then, the shipping routes, the ones you control on the eastern seaboard. I want access. Victor closed his eyes. Those routes were worth tens of millions annually. Giving Natasha access meant giving up a substantial chunk of his empire's revenue. But if it saved Lena, done. Send me the data. 10 minutes. And Victor, you owe me for this. When I call, you pay. Understood. The data came through 8 minutes later. Thermal scans showed 11 people inside the quick stop. 10 grouped in the main store area, 1 in the back room, probably Lena. Structural analysis revealed 2 entrances, front door and back door, both likely guarded. The building had a basement, accessible through a service hatch behind the counter. Victor studied the images, formulating a plan. Frontal assault was still suicide. But if he could get into that basement, come up from below. He briefed the tactical team. I'm going in through the basement. You wait exactly 3 minutes after I'm inside, then hit the front door. Flashbangs, smoke, overwhelming force. Make them think you're the main assault. I'll come up from below and get the girl. That's a lot of ifs, the team leader said. If the basement entrance isn't locked, if they don't have someone guarding it, if you can get to her before they realize what's happening. Then I better be fast. Victor left them there and circled around to the alley behind the quick stop. The basement access was exactly where the schematic said it would be. A metal hatch set into the concrete, secured with a padlock that looked old and rusty. Victor shot the lock off, the suppressed gunshot barely louder than a cough, and pulled the hatch open. Darkness below. A ladder descending into shadow. Victor checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes left on Castellano's deadline. He started climbing down. The basement smelled like mold and old concrete. Victor's eyes adjusted slowly, shapes emerging from the darkness. Storage boxes, old equipment, a water heater that probably hadn't worked in years. And there, a set of stairs leading up to the first floor. He moved carefully, gun drawn, every sense straining for sounds of movement above. Voices drifted down through the floorboards. Briggs talking to someone. Male voice, unfamiliar. Then Lena's voice, defiant despite obvious pain. You can threaten me all you want. I'm not telling you where the others are. A sharp crack. The sound of flesh hitting flesh. Lena cried out. Victor felt his finger tighten on the trigger. Not yet. Had to wait for the right moment. Had to be smart, not emotional. He crept up the stairs, testing each step for squeaks. The door at the top was closed but not locked. Through the gap at the bottom, he could see light. Shadows moving. He checked his watch again. 2 minutes until the assault team hit the front. 90 seconds. 60. Victor put his hand on the doorknob, counted his breathing. In, out, 30 seconds. He thought about Elena. about the promise he'd made at her grave, about how he'd failed her but wouldn't fail Lena, about how some fights couldn't be won cleanly, but they could still be won. 10 seconds. The explosion of flashbangs and breaking glass from the front of the store was deafening even through the walls. Shouting, confusion, the tactical team doing exactly what they were supposed to do, creating chaos. Victor kicked open the basement door and came through fast and low. The back room was small, cramped. Lena sat tied to a chair in the center, face bloodied, eyes wide with shock. Briggs stood behind her, gun pointed at her head, his other hand gripping her shoulder. To the left, near a desk covered in papers, stood Tommy Vega. There it was. The leak. The person who'd given up the safe house location, who told Castellano where Lena was hiding. Tommy Vega, driven by jealousy and stupidity, had sold out the woman he claimed to love. "Drop it," Briggs snarled, pressing the gun harder against Lena's temple. "Drop your weapon, or I paint the walls with her brains." Victor kept his gun raised, aimed at Briggs's center mass. The shot was there. Tight angle, high risk of hitting Lena, but possible. If he was fast enough, accurate enough, lucky enough. "You drop yours," Victor said calmly, "because in about 10 seconds, my team is going to breach that door and kill everyone in this room who isn't me or her. So you can die with a gun in your hand, or you can put it down and live to see a trial." "You think I'm afraid of dying?" Briggs laughed, high and manic. "I'm a dead man either way. Castellano's going to kill me for how badly I've fucked this up. At least this way I take you down with me." "Then you're stupider than I thought." The gunshot came from an unexpected direction. Not Victor's gun. Not Briggs's. It came from Lena. She'd worked one hand free from the ropes. Victor could see the raw skin where she'd rubbed it bloody, and grabbed a piece of broken glass from the floor. In one desperate motion, she drove it into Briggs's thigh, right above the knee. He screamed, his gun hand jerking away from her head, just long enough for Victor to take the shot. The bullet caught Briggs in the shoulder, spinning him around. His weapon clattered to the floor. He collapsed, clutching his bleeding shoulder, cursing and crying in equal measure. Tommy Vega ran for the door, didn't make it 3 steps before Victor put a round through his kneecap. Vega went down screaming, grabbing his shattered leg. Victor crossed the room, kicked Briggs's gun away, then knelt beside Lena. "You okay?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Took you long enough." "Had to make an entrance." He cut through the ropes, binding her to the chair with a knife from his pocket. "Can you walk?" "I think so." The main door burst open. The tactical team poured in, weapons drawn, securing the room in practiced formation. They found 3 of Castellano's men dead in the front of the store, shot during the assault. The rest had fled when the flashbangs went off, running into the night like rats from a sinking ship. The team leader looked at Briggs and Vega, both bleeding and immobilized. "What do you want done with these 2? Victor helped Lena to her feet. She was shaking, adrenaline crash hitting her hard. "Briggs goes to the hospital under guard. He's going to testify against Castellano. Vega." He looked at the kid writhing on the floor, clutching his destroyed knee. "Vega's choice. He cooperates. He gets medical treatment and witness protection. He refuses. He gets dumped in an alley and takes his chances." "I'll talk," Vega gasped through the pain. "I'll tell you everything. Please, just make it stop." "Get him patched up," Victor told the team leader, "and make sure he understands what happens if he changes his mind." Outside, sirens were approaching. Time to leave before the official response arrived and started asking questions Victor didn't want to answer. He guided Lena to the Mercedes, helped her into the passenger seat. She was still shaking, shock setting in. Victor grabbed a blanket from the trunk and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Where's Castellano?" she asked, her voice small. "I don't know yet, but we'll find him. He's going to keep coming. Not for long. Vega's going to give us everything we need to destroy what's left of his organization. And Briggs is going to testify. By morning, Castellano won't have an organization left to run." Lena leaned her head back against the seat, closing her eyes. "I thought I was dead. When Briggs put that gun to my head, I thought that was it. But it wasn't. You fought back, saved yourself. You saved me. We saved each other. That's how this works." The drive back to Victor's real safe house, not the compromised loft, but his personal residence, a penthouse he'd never told anyone about, took 30 minutes through empty streets. Lena dozed in the passenger seat, exhaustion finally overwhelming adrenaline. Victor carried her inside, laid her on the guest bed, still wrapped in the blanket. She didn't wake, just curled into a ball and kept sleeping, her face finally peaceful despite the bruises. He stood there for a long moment, watching her breathe. Alive. Safe. Despite everything Castellano had thrown at them, she was alive. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Where are you? I heard about the quick stop. Is Lena? She's fine. We're both fine. Thank God. Victor, I swear I didn't. I know, it was Vega. He gave them everything. A long exhale. What now? Now we finish it. Castellano's out of options. His money's gone. His people are turning. His operations are shut down. All that's left is him. He's not going to surrender. I know. Which is why tomorrow we're going to find him. And then we're going to end this once and for all. Victor ended the call and walked to the penthouse windows. The city spread out below, lights twinkling in the darkness like stars. Somewhere out there, Thomas Castellano was hiding, planning, maybe preparing one last desperate move. But Victor had already won. Castellano just didn't know it yet. The war was over. All that remained was the execution. Morning came with rain again, the kind that fell steady and gray and made the city look like it was dissolving at the edges. Victor stood at the penthouse windows with coffee he wasn't drinking, watching water streak down the glass in patterns that reminded him of nothing in particular. Behind him, he could hear Lena moving around in the guest room, awake, but not ready to face whatever came next. His phone had been ringing since 5 a.m., Marcus with updates, Daniel with security reports, Catherine with legal developments, even Natasha calling to confirm the shipping route access he'd promised. Victor had ignored them all. For the first time in 30 years, he needed a moment of silence before the storm. The guest room door opened. Lena emerged wearing clothes that didn't fit, Victor's spare shirt hanging off her frame, sweatpants rolled at the waist. Her face was a mess of bruises, purple-black around one eye, her lips split and swollen. But she was upright, moving under her own power, alive. Coffee? Victor asked without turning around. Please. He poured her a cup, handed it over. She took it with both hands, like she needed the warmth more than the caffeine. How bad is it? Lena asked, nodding toward his phone. Depends on your definition of bad. Castellano's on the run, his organization's collapsing. Most of his people have either flipped or disappeared. The ones we picked up last night are singing like they're auditioning for Broadway. So we won. Not yet. Winning means Castellano in custody or in the ground. Right now he's neither, which makes him dangerous. Lena sipped her coffee, wincing as it touched her split lip. Vega told you where he is? Vega told us where he was 12 hours ago. A house in the suburbs under his brother's name. We sent people. House was empty, but it looked like someone left in a hurry. Clothes still in the closet, food on the counter. He knows we're closing in. Where would he go? Victor turned from the window, studying her face. If you were him, cornered, running out of options, desperate, where would you go? She thought about it. Somewhere I felt safe. Somewhere with leverage. Exactly. Which is why I've got people watching his mother's house, his ex-wife's apartment, and the restaurant where his brother works. Sooner or later, he'll reach out to family. They always do. And when he does? We end this. Lena set down her coffee cup, her hands shaking slightly. I want to be there. When you find him, I need to see it finished. Victor had expected this, had prepared arguments against it, reasons why she should stay hidden, stay safe, let the professionals handle the dangerous work. But looking at her now, bruised and battered, but still standing, still fighting, he understood that keeping her away would be another kind of cruelty. Okay, he said, but you stay back. You observe. You don't engage. Agreed? Agreed. His phone rang. Marcus, for the 5th time that morning. Victor finally answered. Tell me you found him. Not exactly, but we found something interesting. The federal agents who raided Castellano's warehouses. They went through his computers, found encrypted files that took them all night to crack. You're going to want to see this. Send it over. Already did. Check your email. Victor pulled up his laptop, opened the secure email. The files Marcus sent were financial records, but not the kind they'd seen before. These showed payments to people Victor recognized. City councilmen, police captains, a state senator, even a federal prosecutor. Castellano hadn't just been running a prostitution ring. He'd been running half the city's government. Jesus, Victor muttered. Lena looked over his shoulder. How many people? 47 that I can count. Probably more buried deeper. He scrolled through the documents, seeing the corruption laid out in neat spreadsheets. Monthly payments, favors rendered, evidence destroyed, cases dismissed. This is bigger than I thought. Is that good or bad for us? Both. Good because it means we have leverage over everyone on this list. Bad because it means Castellano has a lot of powerful people who'd prefer he disappeared before he can testify. His phone rang again. Different number, one he didn't recognize. Victor almost ignored it, then decided to answer. Mr. Hale. The voice was smooth, cultured, with the particular confidence that came from decades of being obeyed. My name is Richard Morrison. I represent certain interests that have been affected by your recent activities. I don't know you, but I know you. And I know what you're trying to do to Thomas Castellano. I'm calling to suggest you reconsider. But Victor put the phone on speaker so Lena could hear. Reconsider. Mr. Castellano's organization touches many aspects of city life. Disrupting it creates complications for people who prefer things to run smoothly. We're prepared to make you a very generous offer to step back and let this situation resolve itself naturally. By resolve itself naturally, you mean let Castellano escape. I mean allow the proper authorities to handle this through appropriate channels. No more raids, no more frozen accounts, no more freelance justice. And if I refuse? A pause. Then you'll discover that your organization isn't as untouchable as you believe. We have resources, Mr. Hale. Connections. The ability to make your life significantly more difficult. Victor looked at Lena, saw the anger in her eyes. The same anger he felt, cold and sharp. Here's my counteroffer, Victor said. You and your certain interests stay out of this. Because if I find out anyone's interfering with my investigation, I'll release those financial records Castellano kept. All 47 names. Every payment, every favor, every dirty little secret. And then we'll see how untouchable your resources really are. You're making a serious mistake. I've made worse. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. He ended the call. Lena was staring at him. You just threatened the entire power structure of the city. I did. They're going to come after you. Probably. But they're also going to think twice about protecting Castellano. Right now, he's a liability. The moment they realize he's more dangerous free than locked up, they'll cut him loose. You're gambling. I've been gambling since the moment I walked into that convenience store. Might as well go all in now. The call from Daniel came 2 hours later. We got movement at the brothers' restaurant. Someone just dropped off a package. Envelope. Looked important. The brother's been on his phone ever since, looking nervous. You intercept the package? Couldn't without showing our hand, but we've got eyes on him. If he moves, we'll know. Stay on him. I'm on my way. Victor grabbed his jacket. Lena was already putting on shoes, boots from the closet that were 3 sizes too big but better than nothing. You don't have to do this, Victor said. Yes, I do. This started because of me. I need to see it end. They took the Mercedes, Daniel texting directions as they drove. The restaurant was in Little Italy, family-owned, the kind of place that survived on loyalty and tradition rather than Yelp reviews. Castellano's brother ran it legitimately, or at least appeared to. No connection to the criminal operation, at least not on paper. Victor parked 2 blocks away. Daniel's surveillance van was positioned across the street, windows tinted, completely unremarkable. Victor and Lena slipped inside. Daniel handed Victor a pair of binoculars. He's at the back table. Been there for 20 minutes. Keeps checking his watch. Victor looked through the binoculars. Vincent Castellano, Thomas's younger brother, 53, soft around the middle, with the face of someone who'd spent his life trying not to be his brother. Right now, he looked terrified. What was in the envelope? Couldn't see. But whatever it was, it's got him rattled. They waited. 30 minutes, 45. Vincent kept checking his phone, looking toward the door, sweating despite the air conditioning. Then a car pulled up. Black sedan, tinted windows. A woman got out, mid-40s, professional, carrying a briefcase. She went inside, spoke briefly to Vincent, then sat down across from him. You recognize her? Victor asked. Daniel pulled up a photo on his tablet. Margaret Chen, federal prosecutor, one of the names on Castellano's payroll. She's here to help him run. Looks that way. Victor watched Chen slide a manila envelope across the table to Vincent. He opened it, pulled out what looked like passports and airline tickets. Chen said something, pointing to her watch, urgency in her body language. They're moving him tonight, Victor said. Has to be. She's giving him travel documents, probably a new identity. Where do you think he is? Close. Chen wouldn't risk being seen with Vincent if Thomas was on the other side of the country. My guess? He's in a hotel nearby waiting for the all clear. Lena leaned forward. So what do we do? We follow Vincent. He's going to lead us straight to his brother. The wait was excruciating. Chen left after 15 minutes, getting back in her car and driving away. Victor had a team tail her, just in case, but his focus stayed on Vincent. The man sat at that table for another hour, staring at the envelope like it might explode. Finally, he moved, grabbed the envelope, left cash on the table, walked out to a beat-up Honda in the back parking lot. There he goes, Daniel said, starting the van's engine. They followed at a distance, staying far enough back to avoid detection. Vincent drove like someone who'd never done anything illegal in his life, obeying every traffic law, checking his mirrors constantly, obviously terrified of being caught. He led them to a motel on the edge of the city, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask for ID. Vincent parked in the back, looked around nervously, then walked to room 117 and knocked 3 times. The door opened. Thomas Castellano stood in the doorway, looking nothing like the confident crime boss Victor had met at the Italian restaurant. He looked old, tired, defeated. The kind of exhaustion that came from watching everything you built crumble in real time. Vincent handed him the envelope. They talked for a moment. Victor couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. Desperation from Vincent. Gratitude from Thomas. Then Vincent left, driving away quickly, probably relieved to be done with his part. Castellano went back inside his room. The lights stayed on. What now? Lena asked. Victor considered his options. They could call the police, let the system handle it. But the system was compromised. Chen had proved that. Half the cops on the force were in Castellano's pocket. He'd be out on bail within hours, disappeared by morning. They could grab him now, bring him in forcibly. But that meant violence, witnesses, complications. And Victor was tired of complications. Or they could do what needed to be done. Clean, final, no loose ends. I'm going in, Victor said. Alone. Like hell, Lena replied. I'm coming with you. Lena, I earned this. Every bruise, every night of fear, every moment wondering if I'd survive. I earned the right to face him. Victor looked at her, saw the same determination he'd seen in Elena's eyes all those years ago when she told him she was going to leave her abuser. That time, he'd let her go alone. That time, she hadn't survived. Stay behind me, he said, and if anything goes wrong, you run. Deal? Deal. They left Daniel in the van and approached room 117 on foot. The motel was nearly empty, most rooms dark. A sign buzzed overhead, half the neon letters dead. The whole place smelled like desperation and cheap disinfectant. Victor knocked on the door, firm but not aggressive. Who is it? Castellano's voice muffled through the door. Housekeeping. I didn't call for... Victor kicked the door in. The lock splintered, cheap wood giving way easily. He was through the threshold before Castellano could react, gun drawn, covering the room in a sweep. Castellano stood by the bed, his own weapon half drawn. For a moment they faced each other, 2 men who'd built empires through violence, now reduced to this, a standoff in a cheap motel room. Don't, Victor said quietly. Castellano looked at his gun, at Victor's gun, doing the math. He was slow, exhausted, desperate. Victor was fresh, focused, ready. The outcome wasn't in question. Castellano let his weapon drop to the bed. How did you find me? Your brother. He led us right to you. Vincent? Castellano looked stricken. No, he wouldn't. He didn't mean to, but family always gives you away in the end. You taught me that, actually, when you sent your men after the women I was protecting. Lena stepped into the room behind Victor. When Castellano saw her, something broke in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or guilt. Hard to tell with men like him. You, he said to Lena. This is all because of you. No, Victor corrected. This is because of you. Because you built an empire on suffering, because you treated human beings like property, because you thought you were untouchable. Castellano laughed, bitter and sharp. Untouchable. You know how long I've been doing this? 35 years. 35 years of building, of paying the right people, of staying one step ahead. And it all falls apart because some girl gets rescued by a man with a conscience. He shook his head. The irony. Where were you going? Victor asked, gesturing to the passports on the bed. What was the plan? Mexico, then South America. I've got money in accounts you haven't frozen, connections you haven't compromised. I could have disappeared, started over. You still can. Castellano looked up sharply. What? You can run. Take those passports, get on a plane, spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder in countries where every cop is for sale and every friend is a potential enemy. Or you can stay. Face trial. Let the system you corrupted decide your fate. That's not a choice. That's a death sentence. Maybe, but it's the only one I'm offering. Why? Why give me any choice at all? You could kill me right now, make it look like I resisted. No witnesses except her, and she'd back whatever story you told. Victor lowered his gun slightly. Because I'm not you. I've done terrible things, hurt people, broken laws most people don't even know exist. But I draw lines. And one of those lines is execution without trial. You get to face what you've done. You get to answer for it. And if I run, then I hunt you. However long it takes, wherever you go, I will find you. And when I do, the offer expires. Castellano looked at Lena. What about you? You want justice, don't you? You want to see me suffer? Lena stepped forward. Victor tensed, ready to intervene if this went wrong, but she just stood there, looking at the man who'd controlled her life for 9 months. I wanted a lot of things, she said quietly. I wanted you dead. I wanted you to feel every bit of pain you caused. I wanted to watch you beg. She paused. But mostly, I wanted to stop being afraid. And standing here, looking at you now, I realize I'm not anymore. You're just a man. A pathetic, desperate man who built his power on other people's fear. And now that fear is gone. So what do you want from me? Nothing. You don't get to give me anything anymore. That's what freedom means. Castellano's face crumpled. For a moment, Victor thought he might cry. Instead, he reached for his gun on the bed. Victor's weapon came up instantly. Don't. I'm not going to run, Castellano said, and I'm not going to trial. You want to know why? Because I know what happens in prison to men like me. I know what those women, the ones I controlled, will do when they find out I'm locked up and vulnerable. I'll be dead within a month, and it won't be quick. Then you should have made better choices. We all should have. Castellano's hand was on the gun now. Tell me something, Hale. When you look in the mirror, do you see a hero? Because I look at you and I see me. Same methods, same violence, just different targets. You think that makes you better? No, Victor said. I think it makes me necessary. Castellano raised the gun, not pointing it at Victor or Lena, but at himself, pressing the barrel under his chin. Don't, Victor said, though he knew it was pointless. Better than the alternative, Castellano said. At least this way, it's on my terms. Thomas. The gunshot was deafening in the small room. Castellano's body crumpled, hitting the floor with a sound that seemed too ordinary for what had just happened. Blood spread across the cheap carpet, dark and inevitable. Lena made a small sound, not quite a scream. Victor moved to block her view, but she'd already seen it. There was no unseeing something like that. Is he... she started. Yes. Victor holstered his weapon, pulled out his phone, called Daniel. It's over. Castellano's dead, self-inflicted. Get the cleanup team here and call Catherine. We're going to need lawyers. Understood. You okay? Define okay. He ended the call. Lena stood frozen, staring at the body, her face pale. Come on, Victor said gently. We need to leave before the police arrive. We're just going to leave him? My people will handle it. Make sure the scene is documented. Ensure the investigation goes smoothly. But we can't be here when the officials show up. Too many questions we don't want to answer." She let him guide her out of the room, into the parking lot, back to the Mercedes. Daniel's team was already arriving, professionals who knew how to manage a situation like this. Victor trusted them to do their jobs. The drive back to the penthouse was silent. Lena stared out the window, processing what she'd witnessed. Victor didn't try to fill the silence with empty comfort. Some things needed to be felt, not explained. Back at the penthouse, Lena finally spoke. "Is it really over?" "The main fight, yes. There'll be cleanup, arrests, trials, people trying to fill the power vacuum Castellano left behind, but the immediate threat is gone. He killed himself rather than face justice. He killed himself rather than face the consequences of his actions. Not quite the same thing." She turned to look at him. "Did you know he would do that?" "No. I hoped he'd choose prison. It would have been cleaner, legally speaking. Would you have killed him if he'd tried to fight instead of surrender?" Victor considered lying, decided against it. "Probably. If he'd threatened you or tried to escape, yes." "Does that make you like him? Like he said?" "Maybe. I don't know. I've spent 30 years trying to draw lines between what I do and what people like Castellano do. But the truth is, we both use violence to get what we want. The only difference is what we want. You wanted to protect people. He wanted to exploit them." I tell myself that. Most days I even believe it. But there are other days when I look at what I've built and wonder if I'm just another monster with better PR. Lena walked to the window, looking out at the city. Dawn was breaking, light creeping across the skyline. "My mother used to say that the only real difference between good people and bad people is what they do when no one's watching. That's when you find out who someone really is." What did you see when you watched me tonight?" "I saw someone who gave Castellano a choice, who could have executed him but offered mercy instead, who built his whole plan around saving people rather than destroying enemies." She turned back to him. "I saw someone who kept his promise." "What promise?" "The one you made to your sister, that you'd never stand by again, that you'd fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves." She smiled, thin and tired. "I think she'd be proud of you." Victor felt something crack in his chest. A grief he'd been carrying for 23 years, suddenly lighter, not gone. That kind of pain never completely left, but bearable. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me keep that promise." They stood there together as the sun rose over the city, two people who'd survived something terrible and come out the other side changed but intact. Behind them, Victor's phone kept ringing. Marcus with updates, Catherine with legal questions, Daniel with situation reports. The machinery of dismantling Castellano's empire, grinding forward. But for this moment, Victor ignored it all. Just stood there with Lena, watching a new day begin, knowing that for the first time in 9 months, she could face it without fear. The war was over. The monster was dead. And somewhere in the city, 31 women were waking up free. It wasn't a perfect ending. Victor knew there would be complications, consequences, new problems rising from the ashes of the old ones. But it was an ending, and sometimes that was enough. The fallout from Castellano's death rippled through the city like a stone dropped in still water. Within 48 hours, the arrest started. Derek Briggs, singing from his hospital bed, gave prosecutors enough ammunition to indict 17 people connected to the prostitution ring. Tommy Vega, facing decades in prison, provided testimony that brought down 3 corrupt police officers and a deputy prosecutor. Margaret Chen, the federal prosecutor who'd tried to help Castellano escape, was suspended pending investigation and would eventually face charges of obstruction of justice. Victor watched it all unfold from his office, tracking each development with the careful attention of someone who'd orchestrated the entire collapse but couldn't afford to leave fingerprints. Marcus brought updates every few hours, spreading files across the conference table like evidence at a crime scene. "The DA's office is calling it the biggest corruption case in the city's history," Marcus said, sliding over a newspaper with the headline blazoned across the front page. 47 people under investigation, 18 already arrested. The mayor's talking about a complete overhaul of the police department. Good. They need it. Catherine says the women are all cooperating with prosecutors. Most of them, anyway. A few are too scared to testify, but we've got enough without them. Victor nodded, scanning the list of names. Women he'd never met but had fought to protect. Sarah Kim, 28, single mother of 2. Diana Rodriguez, 31, undocumented immigrant terrified of deportation. Michelle Warner, 24, recovering addict who'd been exploited by men who knew she was desperate. Each one had a story like Lena's. Each one had been trapped in Castellano's web. What about the safe houses? Everyone settled? Most of them. 18 women took the relocation package. New cities, new identities, clean starts. The rest decided to stay, fight it out in court. Catherine's handling their cases pro bono. Well, your money's handling their cases. Same difference. And the quick stop stores? New ownership as of this morning. Legitimate company, not a shell corporation. They're keeping most of the current employees, raising wages, installing actual security systems. It'll never be a great job, but at least it won't be a trap anymore. Victor leaned back in his chair. 2 weeks since Castellano's death, and the city was still discovering the scope of his corruption. Every day brought new revelations, new arrests, new stories of women who'd been exploited and then discarded. The news coverage was relentless, public outrage building like a wave that couldn't be stopped. What about the blowback? Victor asked. The power structure I threatened. Morrison and his certain interests. Marcus smiled grimly. Silent as the grave. Turns out when you threaten to expose 47 corrupt officials, the people protecting them decide they'd rather cut their losses. Morrison called yesterday, actually, very polite. Said his clients had decided to focus their attention elsewhere. Translation: they're terrified we'll release more evidence. Exactly. They're scrambling to distance themselves from Castellano's organization, trying to look like victims instead of collaborators. It's pathetic. Let them scramble as long as they stay out of our way. The door to the conference room opened. Lena walked in, and Victor felt something loosen in his chest. She looked different than she had 2 weeks ago. The bruises were fading, yellowing at the edges. She'd gotten her hair cut, shorter now, practical. The clothes she wore were her own, jeans and a sweater she'd picked out herself, not borrowed from Victor's closet or grabbed in a panic. Small changes, but they meant everything. Am I interrupting? She asked. Not at all. We were just reviewing the damage. She sat down across from him, glancing at the files spread across the table. Looks like a lot of damage. The good kind, hopefully. Marcus gathered his papers. I'll give you two some privacy. Boss, Catherine wants to talk to you about the civil suits. The women are going after Castellano's estate for damages. Tell her to push for everything, his properties, his assets, his offshore accounts. Drain it all and split it among the victims. That's going to take years in court. Then we better have good lawyers. Marcus left, closing the door behind him. Lena picked up one of the newspapers, reading the headline. They're calling you a hero, you know. Anonymous sources say a concerned citizen brought down the entire operation. Anonymous sources are being generous. I'm no hero. What are you then? Victor considered the question. Someone who did what needed to be done. Nothing more complicated than that. She set down the paper. I've been thinking about what happens next. For me, I mean. And? I want to go back to school, finish my degree, become a doctor like I planned. She paused, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. But I don't want to run away. Don't want to hide in a new city with a new name, pretending the last year didn't happen. You're staying? I'm staying. This is my home. These are my people. And if I leave, if I let what Castellano did chase me away, then he wins. Even dead, he wins. Victor understood that logic, had used it himself more times than he could count. It won't be easy. The trial's going to be public. People will know what happened to you. Some of them will judge you for it. Let them. I'm done hiding, done being ashamed of something that wasn't my fault. She met his eyes. You taught me that. When you kicked down that door at the quick stop, when you chose to fight instead of walking away, you taught me that sometimes the only way to be free is to stand your ground. I didn't teach you that. You already knew it. I just gave you room to remember. Either way, I'm grateful. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the window, the city moved through its afternoon rhythms, traffic and construction, and the endless motion of lives being lived. Victor watched Lena's reflection in the glass, seeing not the terrified girl from the convenience store, but someone harder, sharper, forged in fire and somehow still standing. The university reopened your file, Victor said. Full scholarship plus a stipend for living expenses. You can start in the fall semester if you want. Lena's eyes widened. How did you? I made a donation to their medical school. Very generous donation. They were motivated to be accommodating. You bought my way back in. I removed the financial barriers that were keeping you out. What you do with the opportunity is entirely up to you. She shook her head, but she was smiling. You know that's not how normal people solve problems, right? Normal people don't just throw money at universities and make scholarships appear. I'm not normal people, and neither are you, not anymore. So we might as well use the resources we have. Speaking of resources, Lena pulled a folded envelope from her pocket, slid it across the table. I talked to Catherine about the settlement. If Castellano's estate gets divided among the victims, my share would be somewhere around $200,000. That's conservative. Could be more depending on what assets we recover. I don't want it. Victor looked at her sharply. Lena, I don't want money from him. Don't want anything that came from that place, that life. It feels tainted. She pushed the envelope closer. So I'm signing it over. There's a fund Catherine set up for the other women, the ones who need help with legal fees and relocation and therapy. I want my share to go there. That's a lot of money to walk away from. I know, but it's also the only way I can move forward without carrying him with me. Does that make sense? It did, more than she knew. Victor had spent 30 years building an empire, accumulating wealth and power, and most days it felt like carrying Elena's ghost on his shoulders. The money couldn't bring her back. The power couldn't change what happened. All it could do was give him the tools to keep his promise. It makes perfect sense, Victor said. But think about it for a few more days. Make sure you're certain before you sign anything permanent. I'm certain now, but I'll wait if it makes you feel better. His phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. You need to see this. Turn on channel 7. Victor grabbed the remote, turned on the television mounted on the wall. Channel 7 was showing a press conference, the DA's office, cameras everywhere, reporters crowding around a podium. The district attorney himself stood there, flanked by police brass and city officials, looking uncomfortable in the glare of attention. We're here today to announce the indictment of 47 individuals in connection with what we're calling Operation Safe Haven, the DA said, reading from prepared remarks. This extensive investigation has uncovered a criminal enterprise that operated for over a decade, exploiting vulnerable women and corrupting public officials at every level of city government. The camera cut to photographs being displayed on screens behind the podium. Castellano's face, looking younger, confident. Briggs scowling in a mugshot. Margaret Chen in her official prosecutor photo. Tommy Vega looking exactly like the punk he was. These arrests represent just the beginning, the DA continued. We have recovered extensive evidence documenting not just the criminal enterprise itself, but the network of corruption that enabled it to flourish. In the coming weeks and months, we will be pursuing charges against everyone involved, regardless of their position or influence. A reporter shouted a question. Is it true that a civilian investigation helped break this case open? The DA hesitated. We received cooperation from multiple sources. I can't comment on specifics while the investigation is ongoing. Sources say a businessman named Victor Hale was involved. Can you confirm? Victor tensed. Lena looked at him with concern. Mr. Hale has been cooperative with our investigation, the DA said carefully. Beyond that, I have no comment. More questions shouted over each other. The DA ignored them, wrapping up the press conference with vague promises of justice and accountability. Victor turned off the television. They're going to come after you, Lena said. The media. They'll want to know everything. Let them. I've got nothing to hide. Well, nothing related to this case anyway. What about your business? Won't this expose you to scrutiny? My legitimate businesses will be fine. The other operations... Victor shrugged. I've been insulated from them for years. Layers of separation, shell companies, people whose job is to make sure nothing traces back to me. I'll be fine. You sound very confident about that. I've been doing this a long time. You learn to cover your tracks. But even as he said it, Victor knew the next few months would be complicated. Questions would be asked. Investigators would dig into his background, his businesses, his connections. Some of what they found would be concerning. Some of it might even be criminal if you squinted at it from the right angle. The difference was that Victor had spent 3 decades building relationships with the right people. Judges who owed him favors. Politicians who'd rather stay friendly than become enemies. Business partners who understood that everyone had secrets worth protecting. His empire was built on mutual benefit and carefully maintained leverage, and it would take more than a corruption investigation to bring it down. Still, the attention was unwelcome. Victor preferred operating in shadows, making moves that nobody noticed until they were already complete. This was the opposite. Bright lights and cameras and public scrutiny. Uncomfortable, but necessary. Over the next 3 weeks, Victor's predictions proved accurate. Reporters camped outside his office building. Investigators requested interviews. The IRS suddenly became very interested in his tax returns from the past 7 years. But none of it stuck. His lawyers were excellent, his records clean enough to pass inspection, and his cooperation with the Castellano investigation bought him goodwill with law enforcement. The trials started in spring. Briggs went first, facing charges of assault, conspiracy, and human trafficking. His defense was predictable. He was just following orders, didn't know the full scope of the operation, deserves leniency for his cooperation. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts, 30 years minimum, no parole. Tommy Vega's trial lasted 3 days. His lawyer tried to paint him as another victim, a small-time dealer caught up in something bigger. Then the prosecution played audio recordings from Lena's hidden phone. Vega threatening her, hitting her, promising that if she ever tried to leave, he'd make sure she regretted it. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty. 15 years. Margaret Chen pleaded out before her trial even started, resigned from the prosecutor's office, surrendered her law license, agreed to testify against the other corrupt officials in exchange for a reduced sentence. 3 years in minimum security, followed by 5 years probation. It was lenient, but her testimony brought down a state senator and 2 judges, so prosecutors considered it a worthwhile trade. Victor attended every trial, sitting in the back of the courtroom, watching justice play out in slow motion. Lena came to some of them, but not all. She said watching Vega get sentenced was enough for her. She didn't need to relive the trauma over and over. Victor understood. Hell, he encouraged it. Moving forward meant knowing when to stop looking back. The summer brought changes. Lena started her classes, throwing herself into organic chemistry and anatomy with the focus of someone making up for lost time. She moved into a new apartment, nothing fancy, but clean and safe and hers. No more roommates, no more looking over her shoulder every time she heard footsteps in the hallway. Victor helped her move in, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the building's elevator was broken. It reminded him of helping Elena move into her first apartment, back when they were both younger and the world seemed full of possibility instead of danger. You don't have to do this, you know, Lena said, watching him haul a box of textbooks. I can handle it. I know you can, but let an old man feel useful. You're not old. I'm 47. Everything hurts when I wake up. That's old. She laughed, and Victor realized it was the first time he'd heard her really laugh. Not polite amusement or nervous tension, but genuine joy. It was a good sound. They got everything moved in by evening. Lena ordered pizza, terrible pizza from a place that definitely violated health codes, but stayed open because nobody cared enough to shut it down. They ate sitting on boxes because she didn't have furniture yet. Thank you, Lena said between bites, for everything. I keep saying it, but I don't think you understand how much it means. I understand. Do you? Because you saved my life, Victor. Literally saved it. If you hadn't walked into that store, if you hadn't decided to help, I'd probably be dead by now, or worse. You saved yourself. You were documenting evidence, building a case, fighting back. I just gave you some backup. Well, thanks for the backup then. They finished the pizza in comfortable silence. Outside, the city was settling into its evening rhythms. Somewhere out there, the other women from Castellano's organization were building their own new lives. Sarah Kim had started a small business. Diana Rodriguez had gotten her citizenship. Michelle Warner was 6 months sober and working as a counselor for other women escaping exploitation. Small victories, not perfect outcomes, but real ones. Progress measured in steps rather than leaps. Victor's phone rang. Marcus, calling with some question about a business deal that couldn't wait until tomorrow. Victor stepped into the hallway to take the call, discussing shipping routes and distribution contracts, the mundane machinery of empire keeping him tethered to a life that sometimes felt very far from pizza and empty apartments. When he came back, Lena was standing at the window, looking out at the city lights. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said without turning around. "Go ahead." "Do you ever regret it? The life you chose? The violence and the crime, and all the things you've had to do?" Victor thought about how to answer. The truth was complicated, messy, full of contradictions he'd spent 30 years learning to live with. "Sometimes," he said finally, "late at night, when I can't sleep and the memories won't shut up, I think about the people I've hurt, the choices I've made, the lines I've crossed, and I wonder if there was another way. But then I remember why I made those choices. The people I've protected, the promises I've kept, the small pieces of justice I've managed to carve out of a world that doesn't care about justice unless you force it to pay attention." He joined her at the window. "I'm not a good man, Lena, but I try to be a necessary one. And most days, that's enough." "What about the other days?" "The other days I visit Elena's grave and apologize for not being better." Lena reached out, took his hand. Not romantic, just human contact. Connection. "She'd be proud of you. I know I am." "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you kept your promise. That counts for something." They stood there together as darkness fell completely. Two people who'd survived different kinds of hell and somehow ended up in the same place. Victor knew he should leave, go back to his penthouse and his empire, and his carefully constructed life. But for a moment longer, he stayed. Just stood there with Lena, watching the city breathe. Eventually he did leave, driving through empty streets back to a home that felt less empty than it used to. Marcus was waiting with more updates, cases progressing, investigations closing, the last remnants of Castellano's organization being swept away like debris after a storm. The months passed. Fall came, then winter. The trials continued, convictions piling up. The city reformed its police department, implemented new oversight, created programs to help women escape exploitation before it destroyed them. Not perfect solutions, but real ones. Lena thrived in school, made the dean's list her first semester, started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping others navigate the same nightmare she'd escaped. She dated someone briefly, a fellow med student, decent guy, nothing serious. It didn't work out, but that was okay. She had time to figure out what she wanted. Victor watched from a distance, checking in occasionally, but giving her space to build a life that was truly hers. He'd learned with Elena that sometimes the best way to help someone was to step back, let them find their own path. Spring returned with rain, the kind that washed the city clean and made everything feel possible again. Victor stood at Elena's grave on what would have been her 49th birthday, holding flowers he'd brought every year for 23 years. "I kept the promise," he said to the headstone. "Found someone who needed help and actually helped her. Didn't walk away. Didn't look the other way. Did everything I should have done for you." The stone didn't answer. It never did. But Victor felt something settle in his chest anyway. A peace he hadn't expected, hadn't thought he deserved. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Coffee? I have news." They met at a cafe near the university. Lena was practically vibrating with excitement, couldn't sit still. "I got into the research program," she blurted out before Victor could even sit down. "The one I told you about. Working with Dr. Martinez on trauma recovery protocols. It's competitive. They only take 5 students a year, and I got in." Victor smiled. "That's incredible. Congratulations. It means I'll be working with women who've experienced violence and exploitation, developing better treatment methods, more effective interventions. Everything I went through, I get to turn it into something that helps other people." Elena would have loved that, taking pain and transforming it into purpose. "I thought about her when I applied, about what you said, how she'd want something good to come from all this." Lena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm going to make a difference, Victor. For real. Not just surviving anymore, but actually changing things. You already are making a difference. This just makes it official." They talked for an hour, Lena describing her research plans, the women she'd be working with, the protocols they'd be developing. Victor listened, watching her transform from survivor to fighter to healer. Full circle, in a way. The journey from victim to victor, measured in small steps and hard-won victories. As they were leaving, Lena hugged him. Tight and fierce and full of gratitude she still couldn't quite express in words. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for fighting when I couldn't, for keeping your promise." "Thank you," Victor replied, "for letting me." They parted ways there, Lena heading back to her classes, Victor returning to his empire. Different paths, but connected by the choice he'd made one rainy night in a convenience store to not look away from suffering. Years would pass. Lena would finish medical school, become a doctor, eventually run her own clinic specializing in trauma recovery. She'd help hundreds of women escape the kind of nightmare she'd survived, breaking cycles of violence and exploitation one person at a time. Victor would continue his work, walking the line between criminal and protector, using power for purposes both dark and necessary. His empire would grow, his influence expand, but he'd remember the lesson learned in that convenience store. Power meant nothing if you didn't use it to protect the powerless. They'd stay in touch, meeting occasionally for coffee or lunch, comparing notes on their respective wars against the predators who thought fear made them strong. Different methods, same goal. Different paths toward the same truth, that some fights couldn't be won by following rules. That justice sometimes required people willing to operate in shadows. That the difference between a monster and a protector wasn't the violence they used, but who they chose to use it for. Victor never considered himself a hero. Heroes were pure, uncomplicated, certain of their righteousness. He was none of those things. He was just a man who'd made a promise 23 years ago and finally kept it. Who'd looked at a scared girl in a convenience store and seen his sister. Who'd chosen to fight instead of walking away. In the end, that was enough. Not redemption exactly, but something close. A debt paid, a wrong partly righted, a life saved that might save others in turn. The city moved on because cities always do. The scandals faded from headlines. The trials concluded. New corruption took root where old corruption had been torn out. The cycle continued because cycles always do. But in the spaces between the darkness, small lights persisted. Women who'd been freed, lives that had been saved, promises that had been kept. And late at night, when Victor couldn't sleep and the weight of 30 years pressed down like gravity, he'd think about Lena, about her laughter in an empty apartment, about her determination to transform pain into purpose, about the choice he'd made to not walk away. And in those moments, the weight felt a little lighter, the darkness a little less absolute, the violence he'd committed and would commit again justified, at least partially, by the lives it protected. He was no hero, but he was necessary. And some nights, that was enough to let him sleep. The rain that had started everything came again, hammering against the penthouse windows in familiar patterns. Victor stood watching it, coffee in hand, thinking about convenience stores and promises and the ways people saved each other. His phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "Just admitted my first patient to the clinic, a girl, 22, same situation I was in, reminded me of us, reminded me that the fight continues." Victor typed back. "Then keep fighting. I'll be here if you need backup." Because that's what it was in the end. Not salvation or redemption or heroism, just the ongoing fight against darkness, waged by imperfect people using imperfect methods, trying to protect others from the monsters they'd once failed to stop. Elena's ghost smiled from the shadows, finally at peace. And somewhere in the city, Lena was saving a life. And somewhere else, another woman was taking the first steps toward freedom. And the cycle continued, breaking and rebuilding, darkness and light in endless succession. Victor Hale watched the rain fall and knew, with the certainty of someone who'd spent 30 years learning hard truths, that he'd do it all again. Every choice, every fight, every moment of violence in service of protection, because someone had to stand against the predators. Someone had to keep promises. Someone had to be willing to get their hands dirty so others could stay clean. And tonight, tomorrow, for however many years remained, that someone was him. The rain fell. The city slept. And in the darkness between what was and what could be, small victories persisted. Fear only ruled when no one stronger stood against it. and Victor Hale was done standing aside.